Whoever is listening, welcome back. My name is Grayson, man. This is the Man with a Plan podcast, episode 46. Today, I have a very special guest. Joining me is legendary NFL strength coach Al Miller. Al Miller is a member of the USA Strength and Conditioning Coaches Hall of Fame and worked in the NFL for over 20 years, including the Denver Broncos, the New York Giants, Atlanta Falcons, and the Oakland Raiders. He is not only one of the best, but respected by everyone. He is a great guy, and I'm so happy to have him on. Coach Miller, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Grayson. I appreciate it. It's really an honor to be had on the show, and hopefully I can be able to answer some of the questions that you have.
So I just want you to take me through, how did you get your start in, just as a coach, what events in your life led to such a really decorated career in football? Just take me through that process.
Oh, boy. Well, as far as football is concerned, that was just something, where I grew up, a little town, El Dorado, Arkansas, in the south part of Arkansas, that was just something we did. The whole street that we lived on, that's what we did, playing football. And I never gave it a moment's thought, was I going to go out for football when it got into the years where you had to make a decision. It was just something I did. And I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship for it, and had a wonderful college career. It was a lot of fun. But as far as the strength is concerned, I was a man that came into my life. I was about 12, 13 years old, and my father had just died. Mother knew I was going down the wrong street, and she needed somebody to intervene as a male figure. And I wasn't old enough at that time to have coaches per se. And so she took me down to where she got her hair done, Grayson, and there was a man there, the husband of the wife that owned the beauty parlor there, and he was a weightlifter, and he had spent his time in life in United States Navy and was out on the West Coast there at Muscle Beach, and that brought me in. And Mother we were poor as church mice anyway, and so it was we didn't have any money to be able to spend, but he said if I would help him try to get some people, then he'd see what he could do for me. So that's basically where I started my lifting right there. And I'll never forget the first thing that we ever did. We did some bicep curls, Grayson, and measured my arm, boy. Back in, we were cocky, and boy, we threw that little old thing. It was like a wasp stung me on that arm, and it measured something about 10 inches, and I was proud of that thing. So we did some curls, and he talked a while and told me what would happen, and talked to him, did another set of curls, and got a little tough toward the end there. And he said, let's finish up with one more set. So I didn't do but about 7, and I had to help myself with the last 3. And he talked a second or two. He said, now let's measure that arm now. Well, I threw that thing up there. I said, wow, that thing is tight. And shoot, I tell you what, Grace, it was almost a half inch, best I can remember, bigger. And I thought it was like an explosion went on my head. I just looked up at the sky, and I thought, my Lord, in a month I'll be a monster, And that's what started it. And there you go. Rest is history, as the old saying goes.
The rest is history. So one of the early things that I read about you is that you had the opportunity to work under Alabama and head coach Paul Bear Bryant. Tell me, what was that like? What things did you take away from him and his coaching style that helped you later on in your career?
Well, I started in junior high coaching, and that's another story altogether. But I had been at a couple of places. I'd been junior high, high school, small college, and then I went to Mississippi State. My first I coached football and was a strength coach back in junior high. We lifted in junior high. So That was in 1970, and let's see, and around Grayson, probably 80, 79, 80. I went to Mississippi State that's where I had my first full strength coaching job, I guess you could say, where I wasn't doing 2 or 3 different things. And we had a real good football team. We had a great coach, Emory Ballard, and Emory's the one that created the wishbone offense out there with Darrell Wall in Texas. And he was a mighty fine coach. We had some other really fine coaches that were on our staff at that time, some very good ones. And we had a lot of good football players. And it was just a happenstance. And I came in there at the last hour, and we had a good in-season program, and the in-season program that we got stronger as the year went on. Ended up beating Alabama for the first time, I think, in 20 years, and beat them in a good physical football game, which I knew that, Coach Bryant would probably watch and take note of. But basically, then I went back here to my alma mater in Northeast Louisiana, is what it was called at that time, University. And then got a call from Coach Bryant. Went to work for him. It would take the rest of this show to be able to try to tell you all the things that I'd learned from it. But basically, I'll be honest with you, Grayson, the things that I had learned in college, I was very, very fortunate. I'm going to be the very first one to ever tell you that I am a very fortunate person and blessed, and the fact that I had great high school coaching and mentors. I had a great person in the boys club system, Cecil Kellum, that I owe a lot to, because I was fatherless, and basically I could go astray. And people, good Lord, had placed them in my life that wouldn't let that happen. And they didn't, and put me in the right direction. And that was great coaching. So the things that I learned there with Coach Bryant, were a lot. I learned a lot of things. Don't misunderstand me, but a lot of the things that he was teaching, people had already taught me before. I think he was one of the most unique people that I've ever met in my entire life. Now, he was raised about 40 miles from where I grew up, and dated a girl from my hometown. He didn't have a way to get there. He had to hop a train to get there, and then the train come back. It was a lot of just things that you learn through the game of football, of the toughness. He's the toughest man I believe I've ever been around, mentally tough to the point, and it was a big physical human being too, and just a real good teacher. Never said a lot. When he said something, it had meaning. And I find myself today in time looking back on a lot of the little, he would call ditties, that he would tell us. And I'll tell you what, every one of them's come true, no doubt about it.
So tell me about your partnership with Al Vermeil, famous brother Dick Vermeil. Walk us through that coaching pyramid that really was instrumental for a lot of athletes. Take me through how that was created, your partnership with him with the 90s Bulls, just all of that process. Something else that I found really fascinating was just where you weren't only a part of football, but you're able to branch out and have your influence be a part of basketball too.
Well, when you're a strength coach, you have them all. Now, I'm going back to Alabama. It was just me and one other guy, and we had to part ways there, and I brought in and hired Kent Johnston. Now, Kent went on and became one of the great strength coaches of all time, too, in the NFL. And he's still in the NFL. I think he's with Carolina Panthers right now. And so that was it. So you had to be able to coach a lot of things. When I was at Mississippi State, the way Al and I met is that they had a player that came down and came in the off season right after Christmas. And when he came in, and he came down, and I went down to the weight room and saw him, met him, and I knew he's a fine looking kid. I said, "Yeah, Al Milton, the strength coach here, so forth, so on." And he introduced himself, and I said, "If any way I can help you, please let me know." And he said, "I've got my own book." I said, "Okay, that's good." And I said, "Workout manual." I said, "You mind if I see it?" And so I picked it up. He said, "No." I said, "I don't want you looking at that." He said, "My strength coach told me not to let anybody look at that." And I kind of laughed because there wasn't a lot of us out there strength coach wise at that time. I mean, we were few and far between. And so Al, I got Al's. I said, "Well, let me get the name and number, and I'll call him, man." So I did. I called him on the phone, and that's where we first started. Had our first start conversation. Must last half an hour because he got on. He can talk, and he had a lot to say, and I had a lot to listen to. So, and that's how we started. And as far as all of the rest of it is concerned, it was just an educational deal for me. We would go in there and start talking things. Al has a really unique way by which he can take in just about everything that he can read and see and study. And strength coaching, it's like Coach Bryant said about football. Football came easy to him. Strength coaching came easy to Al Vermeil. And I think that in my mind, he is, best strength coach that's probably ever been. That goes way out there because I was taught by Alvin Roy, who's the reason all of us have a job in this business or have a job in this business anyway. And the others, Bob Ward and Lord knows all the other great ones that have been in it, but Al has a way of being able to understand it and apply it, and that doesn't happen very often. And he had no problems at all, like me. He had no problems on picking up the phone, calling somebody, or bringing someone in. And so, as time would go on, we got very close, very, very, very close, and still are today. I still love him to death. I know he's a dear friend of the Miller family, and I sure hope I still got a spot at the table on there when his wife goes to cooking. But it was just something that Al and I put together. He put together the whole thing as far as the pyramid is concerned. I didn't help anywhere, anything on that, but I have followed it, and I still think it's something. If anybody is interested in trying to become a strength coach, that is the way to go. It's laid out there for you. So it gave a lot of insight to what you needed to do and what you didn't need to do. I think if I could answer the question, that would probably be what it would be, Grayson.
So,
And there's one thing very important in strength training. Everybody is coming up with programs now, and they're here, there, and yonder. But the thing is, you've got to be able to have a plan for everything. Now you do. I mean, all of the great coaches I've ever been with, and I've been with quite a few, that they always had a plan. And that plan is whatever they feel like it is. And Al Vermeil's got a plan. Most strength coaches, they'll come up for the first things. Any of them ask you, "But let me see your program." You can pull out an old English paper or something. that doesn't explain anywhere close to the things you should be able to try to be able to ascertain as a strength coach. Because I would ask you why, Grayson, why do you back squat? Why do you power clean? Why do you do jumps? Why do you do a run drill? Why do you do all this? Those are the things, and once you can do that, get questions answered, then you can start being able to build your own program and belief. Now, once you do that, then do just like Al Vermeil did. Now, he and I and Johnny Parker and Rob Panarello, this is later on down in life. This is in the 80s probably right now. Al was already out of NFL and into baseball and basketball. And he was dabbling with bringing in people. And, so Johnny Parker and I started the same thing a little bit. And we had a man, Gregory Goldstein, who taught me and taught us, a program by which, it's if you do it right, it's a very, very, very productive program. It really is. And it was something that the Russian back in, he was back in the 50s. He was a lifter himself in the 50s. And they learned that it was something that the Russian government or athletic department of the government created. And it's a fantastic program. I've never seen the likes of it. Matter of fact, Johnny Parker and I and Rob Panarello wrote a book, and we didn't want to die without somebody knowing, so it's out there. So anyway, long story short, wandering around a lot, Grayson, but it's Vermeil had all of it down. We have started bringing in people, but as far as the pyramid is concerned and all of the points that go in with the pyramid, he had built it from his own works, from what little he might have gotten from any and everybody, and he developed it and put it in a step-by-step program that, like I said, it's a can't-miss deal if you follow it.
Well, that's awesome. It's just such a layered guy, such a layered, detailed program, something that you can really believe in and get behind. And I guess that's what makes the legends of your field so great. So tell me, since you've been in the field of strength conditioning, especially as you elevated to the pros and even in Alabama, have you seen the program and just the idea of what strength conditioning means? Have you seen it evolve since you've been there? And where do you see it going as a future?
Well, when I first started in it was a novelty. I'd really, Alvin Roy was the very first strength coach that was noted, and he started when he was right after World War II, in the he was a trainer for the Olympic lifting team, and they would go overseas, and so he really became enthralled with the Russian way of doing things and what they did, and he mimicked a lot of that. Well, he took it back and he opened up a health club there in Baton Rouge, and I don't ask me the time. It's somewhere around 1950-ish, somewhere in there. Then he got involved with the Struma High School, and the Struma High School was a very, very strong school back in Baton Rouge in those early 50s, and but they got into the weight training program, and I think they won something like 8 to 10 state championships. Then, let's see, Mr. Roy went then, to LSU. They won the national championship. And then he went into the NFL. So these, and then won Super Bowls there. So, and that was the guy that, kind of fostered me as far as what I did. And I was fortunate again to be able to have coaches that would go down and were forward thinking enough to understand to try to teach us. The name of them was Coach Dwight Adams, and he ended up as in charge of pro personnel for the Buffalo Bills back in their heyday. So tells you he was a sharp guy ahead of his time. But that's pretty much how it all started. And then the program started. And then everybody started going, trying to find the people that knew what they were talking about. Of course, the curtain didn't come down until '89. So any of the information that you might be receiving from any of those Iron Curtain countries, which that was where all the training was really taking place, you couldn't hardly get it, if any. And if you got it, it was going to cost you a pretty penny. So that was pretty much it, Grayson.
So where do you see the future of the program? Like right now, it's 2021. We have so much technology, so many different ways to be able to figure things out. Where do you see it going from here?
Well, I made the statement a long time ago. I think it was in the 80s, right after I left Alabama and got into the NFL with the Denver Broncos. The computer age was coming about. Now, before then, I had 140 some odd players there at Alabama. And I made their program out, a program that I got from Dr. Mike Stone. There's a name he has spent his life in there teaching it. Great teacher. I learned a lot from him. He is at a university, I think, in Tennessee now, and he was at Auburn and ran their entire, strength clinic at that time that they had down there, which was a big major part of their curriculum that they used at the university, and has created the same thing as such up in Tennessee. Now, with that, you had to do it by hand. There's no computer. I mean, so you had a pencil, you had a calculator, and you had a lot of sheets that, that you had to write out workouts for. So I said, when I went to the NFL, then that's when the computer started coming around. And a young man by the name of Rocky Colburn played for us in Alabama. He was a very intelligent kid. And he was a heck of a safety. And he, I think, finished about third in his class at Alabama in math. Well, he took what we had gotten from Gregory Goldstein, I mentioned earlier, and put it into a computer. And his wife, he married, she was in the computer program at that time in Alabama. So bingo, you had a perfect mix right there of what needed to be done. So with the understanding that, trying to answer your question, Grayson, is I told everybody then, I said, well, the way that this is going to go is going to be, certainly this computer, you've not just seen the start of it. It's going to offshoot into a lot of things. Now, you've got today and time. You've got where you can you have things that can measure the bar speed. Al Vermeil, I'll tell you what, his name pops up again, Grayson, and he built one of the greatest tools that can be used. And I think got into a legal battle with a person that was in there with him. But I mean, it did everything. It measured bar speed. It measured time on the ground, depth jumping. It measured height that you could jump. We used it a lot for defensive back drills. You can measure, qualify everything that you wanted to. Standing jumps, vertical as well as linear. And it was just unbelievable. And people have now trying to duplicate a lot of those things that are coming up. So what is it coming to? I think that all of who knows? I mean, that's like asking me to look in the future. Shoot, I can't tell you what I had for breakfast by half the time. But it's going to get better. I hope. I think one of the things that everybody's missing, Grayson, is the fact that I think they're trying to utilize all of these gadgets rather than understanding the program, rather than understanding the kids that they're coaching. One of the most important things you can do, just think about it. Now let's take you, for instance, Grayson, man, and put you into a situation where you're playing at Clemson there, let's just say, and if we take you in there and we load you down with the weights and, you hurt yourself, then, well, what are you going to think? You're going to, man, I ain't lifting weights anymore. That stuff's dangerous. Now, you go in there with a well-thought-out program, guy's going to find out, first of all, what you can't do. So now you just go in there and start one-leg squatting, because the game of sport, just about every one of them, is a one-legged game. When you run, man, it's 1 foot on the ground. So you've got to be able to always handle your own body weight one-legged. And so you've got to be able to find out, can he squat all the way down and up for a number of sets and reps? Those are just simple little deals that you can do. There are a couple of more. Al's got them written down on his pyramid of development. And we've introduced a deal called the complex, and Esteban Javorek came up with that. And I think he was somewhere in Kansas still. I think last time I heard, he's a knowledgeable person. I think he's from Romania. I may be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but somewhere like that. And so anyway, I think it's coming to the point that people are getting into it, not knowing a lot of what's going on. I know the CSCCA has done a great job of trying to educate the kids and everything, but I think there's a lot of work to be done in that, and I think kids need to be able, I say kids, young men and women that are getting into the field need to be able to understand how to write and develop a program, what the steps and, Vermeer's hierarchy is going to be, understand about the human body of what it's going to take sets and rep wise, which, you could, I guess I'm selling my book, but you buy the book right there or get into a lot of it. That's got to be somewhere, else, but it's find out sets and reps, what they will add up to, and you need to be able to, follow the programming. It's involved with that. Understanding when to use exercise. There's a lot of things, Grayson, a lot of things that are being, I think, missed along the way. And I saw somewhere the other day, somebody had worked all summer long, and now we're all getting into the period of time, and everybody's starting up the ball. And they're going to go for what they call the hell week before they went into, their 2-a-day practices. And, nothing could be further from the truth that you ought to do, because, you get them, you're trying to get them, the players, to the strongest, fastest, quickest, most explosive position they can be in. And throwing them into a hell week where you take all the sets and reps and just throw them out the door and just try to run them in the ground, that takes it out of their legs rather than puts them in a ground position. So little ditties like that, people just got to understand. Coaches have to understand what they're doing when they ask them. Mental toughness, but your mental toughness has got to come from a lot of other ways. So, did that answer some of the question you were looking for?
Oh yeah, it's very detailed. Like I feel like everybody's gonna get something out of this interview, which is just so great. I want to start with what your NFL career was like. Take me through the day-to-day process of working for some of these just billion-dollar industries, such as like the Broncos, the Falcons, the Raiders, the Giants. These are storied programs, storied franchises, and for you to be a part of it, how does that make you feel as you reflect on it? How did that process go? Just walk us through that.
Yeah, that's a good question right there. I was at Alabama, and when I left my university here, the one I graduated from, and went to Alabama, I knew that I was sticking my neck out there. And I'll answer that by saying this, Grayson. What I mean is, the major schools, when you're in there, you're in a turnstile pretty good, and you don't know where that turnstile is going to take you and kick you out. You may be in, state of Washington, you may be in Florida, you may be in South California, or you may be in Buffalo, New York. You don't know where you're going to be if and when you get into those collegiate type of situations, where Alabama's always been, for years and years and years, one of the top universities, in the United States. So I knew then, and I knew Coach Bryant told me when he interviewed me that, he said, I'm in the twilight of my career, and he said, I want you coming here because it's Alabama rather than me. And, so he knew that he didn't have too much longer left in the coaching field, and tried to make it completely clear that things could change. And so I always said, and to my wife at that time, who has since passed away, and we had children, that I didn't want to get to be a suitcase coach, to where, boy, you pack up here and go, pack up and go, pack up and go. I saw too much of that, and that just wasn't me. But when I made that move to Alabama and got into the professional league, I never wanted to coach in the NFL. Never did. Never thought the kids could or the players could, want to train and work as hard. Heard a lot of horror stories, coming back from there. And so consequently, I was not looking to go to the National Football League. Was not.
Huh.
And but when the opportunity, I won't forget, that came along, and I went out and interviewed. I sat down with Dan Reeves and Reed Johnson, and we were at dinner one night, great restaurant, and we were sitting there eating, so Dan was doing a lot of talking and asked me, and I said, well, Coach, I said, this doesn't sound like, I said, excuse me for asking, I said, this doesn't sound like an interview. I said, it sounds like you're offering me the job. He said, I am. He said, I want you to take it. And boy, I tell you what, I said, well, I was trying to buy time then. I was doing my best Ali shuffle I could muster up, but I wanted to go back and talk to my wife, and the one thing it did, it was a boost of about $20,000, but back then that was a lot of money in 1985, and so it allowed her to stay home and be able to raise our children, and I got out there and I said, Lord, I don't know how long this is going to last, but, you know, but we kids did a great job of accepting me in there. I think they knew or felt like that, I was there to try to be able to help them, and that I had somewhat of an idea of how to do that. And then we started in at it. And then you just got to be able to sell yourself on a day-to-day basis right there. And but that was pretty much my inauguration into the National Football League. Then I got to understand the NFL player a little more, and the entirety of the game, much longer game in the year than the college game was. So each place that I went, Grayson, I think that was part of your question. I look at the time that I spent in Denver. That's probably the chandelier of my coaching career. That in Alabama was two of the things and places that were different, and they were different because of the people. And I think that's what can be said just about anything that you ever delve in. Anybody that feels like something's real good, then it's real good because of the people that you have there. And the people that we had there running the program with our owner, Pat Boland, who's since passed away, and John Beek, who's still there, living in I think the Denver area, and our head coach. He was I had met him when I was recruiting in college, and over in Dallas, a friend of mine, Joe Ferguson, who was a great quarterback in himself, played about 17 years. He and I, good friends, and went over, and he introduced me, got us in there, and we met them all. But anyway, he was the head coach, and I just left Coach Bryant, and boy, that was a guy, that I really tied to, and worked for him for 19 years. And I had opportunities to go someplace else and other things, but he was far better than anything else out there. I knew I could trust him, and that goes a lot in times of old and certainly times of now. And he was a man. He was a football man. He trained us. He let us work. He appreciated what I did. He himself, as a player coach with Coach Landry in Dallas, ran the strength program, and what he learned under Alvin Roy helped him. So those type of things right there joined us up, and we had a wonderful time. Now we have great players, and anytime you have great experiences, you usually win, and we won. We won a lot, and we had great players, and we had some all-star players, and they were a lot of fun. Besides being great players, they worked hard. And we did work hard at it, but we tried to work smart at the same time. And it was just it was a wonderful, wonderful relationship. Mr. Boland couldn't have been better the way he treated all of us. And he would come down. He himself was a very good athlete. Was a triathlete, and he raised in Hawaii, and he used to surf and swim and run and bike and everything else. So good athlete. Coach Reeves obviously played 9 years running back in the NFL. You got to be pretty good. and he stayed. So great opportunity. And then I followed him to New York, and then I followed him to Atlanta, and all of those places. The New York Giants. Boy, I hate to make that move because I had to follow Johnny Parker in his footsteps. Johnny and I got to be good friends back when he was in high school and I was just taking my first college job. And we remain good friends till today, just like we do with Al Bill, Rob Panarone, Don Chu, just all those guys. We're still very close. We don't get to see each other as much, but we all call each other. Now, besides sets and reps and how fast and how much you can jump and all that, what we're talking about, how you doing, how you feeling, are you up and walking? Yeah, it's, are y'all going to win the conference, and then you think how you going to do in that deal. So I told him about a year or two ago, I said, boy, our dialogue has changed tremendously. But still great friends. And for those types of things right there, when you make friends with the people that you're in business with like that, boy, I tell you what, it's some of the greatest times of my life been spent with those guys. And talk about learning a bucket load, and really did. And I'm gonna tell you one thing. Let me interject something. It's probably off the beaten path, Grayson. So you got to keep me on track. Sometimes I'll wander.
You're all good, man. You're all good.
But one of the things that we figured out, Johnny and I and Vermeil, it was around 84 or 5, somewhere in there. I think 85. We started. Hey, look, calling each other. Hey, what's going? How do you what? Well, Al Vermeil, via with the Bulls, would send him over to Italy to check out the prospects of basketball players in the country of Italy. Well, Al, being of Italian descent, that was, boy. I mean, he said, boy, you talk about some food. He was, Al loved eating when we were young. And I tell you what, he was in hillbilly heaven. But he got to meet some very, very good strength and conditioning coaches there. And he got to meet them in different other places too. And of course, the success that they had with the Bulls at that time, winning championship after championship, and the Super Bowl that he won back with the 49ers, all of those things, allured them to him. And we all got together one time. He said, I can't keep going around listening to these things. He said, I've got to be able to, I want to bring them in here. And so we started talking to three of us, and what we would do is bring in people, get the organization to pay for them to be, a one-on-one time. Now, we may get them there for 3 days, but if you take a airplane ticket and you could usually house them in a nice hotel close by that would give you some great rates, and then pay them whatever they wanted, that is a whole lot cheaper than going to a 1 hour lecture with 500 people in the conference center, and you're trying to rub elbows with them to ask one question. So we did a great job, I think, with that. That's one of the things that I think was one of the best things that we did. And we would shoot video of it, and that's when video came out then, and that was what we do with video it. And if Al would bring in, we would get kind of like the menu for the off season, who we would bring in, and he would bring in somebody, that he was more interested this time with this or that aspect. And each one of us would have some people in, and what we would do is just swap, the videos. That gave us, man, you stayed in your own bed You didn't have to travel all over the world, and you got to have them right there at your disposal, one-on-one, all day long for maybe 3 days or so. And it just proved extremely beneficial to all of us as far as the knowledge that we achieved and got from that. And, with guys like, Charlie Francis, Lauren Seagrave, and the people, from over, and then Johnny and Rob and them went over to Severshansky and Medvedev, over those people over in Russia. And of course, we brought in Gregory Goldstein and Ben Tabachnik, invented the parachute. He was in charge of speed development for 24 years in Russia. So, just it helped everything. So that's about that one. So have you got another one for me?
I've got a couple. You're all good, man. It's all part of that experience. You've got so many stories, so many great just things. You've got so many bits of knowledge to share that, like, whatever you want to say is just so valuable to not only this interview but for me and for the audience. I want to go into like your preparation for the NFL playoffs. Obviously, NFL playoffs is a really just like it's like the Final Four. It's like one of the great tournaments of sports. How did you prepare your teams in terms of strength conditioning? Did you keep up the grueling program? Did you keep them lifting, or did you kind of slow it down? Take me through your process as the postseason wrapped up.
Well, that's a real good question. I got two major points on that right there. We understood the workout situation. Back then we had in the NFL we had perfect situation. We had, I think, 16, 18 weeks uninterrupted, workouts that we did with the team. Then in there was about a 2-week period. I think they had what was Pascali, which did not include the big guys. And, so why they came up with what they call OTAs, I have no idea. I mean, if kids played guard in junior high school, college, and now he's in the pros, and he doesn't know how to block, and you're going to go out there, and they play. You play in 16 regular season, 4 preseason. That's 20 games, and if you're fortunate enough, you play, anywhere 3 to 4. So that's more games in the playoffs. That's 20. That's half a year. So half a year you're playing football, and if you hadn't learned it through all of those years, how in the world you're going to go out there in OTA, and they get them out there in spring practice? I thought that was the stupidest thing that I've ever heard of in my life, and I stand behind that. But we had great, workouts with them that we would go into our training camp, which was a lot longer, I think 7-8 weeks as it was. We would go and then break and come back in and go through your, our preseason games, and then season. And we had 16 straight games. Now we would once we would try to bring our people, Grayson, to a peak at the beginning of training camp. Okay, think about it. That is the time that you want to give every kid that comes out there the best opportunity that I can provide for them to make the team, would get them as big, as strong, as fast, and explosive, and as free of injury as you possibly could. So that was the peak right there. We would bring them in. And then about, I think it was about a week, 4 or 5 days before, 5 days probably before we went to a training camp, we'd just pull off, let them R&R, do whatever, pack, whatever they need to do. Then once we started training camp, it was a little different deal. We lifted, but we cut the reps way back. We really did. And then went on in, and then so the first year we did it, we were a good football team. We were 11-5 and did not make the playoffs. And that was the last time, Grayson, that rule, they changed it that year, of course, and never had it again where, an 8-8 team went in ahead of us. But then the next thing happened is that I went up, watched Al Vermeil, and they were doing really well up there. And he called me, and my wife and I went up there and visited with him and his wife, and stayed 3 or 4 days, and went and watched them work out. Well, they had a game that night, and went in there to the Bulls' place. Now, a nice weight room there, and they were lifted. I didn't say anything. I'm sitting there looking, and look, they were lifted. And I'm not talking about little bitty. They were power cleaning and squatting. And so anyway, we finished watching them and everything, and they showered up. Now, this was the morning they played that night. I said, look, I said, Al, I said, look, what are you doing? He said, well, you don't. And he told me then, he said, it's about the number of repetitions you do. And he said the weight has something to do with it too. But he said, if you don't do a number of reps to tire them out, and in basketball is a lot, you got a lot of, you don't have constant running all the time. It's a game up and down pretty good, but, he said you'll have ball out of bounds, you'll have jump ball, you'll have foul, you'll have, different things stop the game. So anyway, he talked to me about that, and then I, in turn, Q&A'd him for a long time about it. Johnny Parker had taken another approach with it, but Johnny had already learned that same thing, and we played each other, Johnny and I, in the Super Bowl in '86, and of course they pinned my ears back. But Johnny had already instituted the same thing that Al was doing, and so that was a very big point. So when we got into the playoffs, I wanted to be able to try to, knowing or planning or hoping anyway that we would go to the Super Bowl. That would be another 4-week cycle that you usually had to go through. So we would try to, and we did our lifting. We would approach 85% for repetitions, usually anywhere from 1 to 3. But now when we did that, I started doing after I watched Al and Johnny taught it to me, out there in California in the Super Bowl, of being able to lift our kids, bring them to another peak, just like we do before we brought them in to 2-a-days. So that was important right there, Grayson. And that was one thing. Then we, time off. Now I'll tell you another thing that I did learn. We also went to, a couple of championship games, AFC championship games, and I learned this. I would go to all of the players and visit with them, and I would talk to them. So what do you do? How long do you take off? What is your rest period? What do you do when you come back? So I Q&A'd them all pretty good. And I found that the great majority, 85% of the guys that were long-standing, real good, all-pro players would start their workouts very soon after the season was over with, like 3 weeks. And I said, and I'd ask them why, what, and all of that stuff. So I got a great insight on a lot of things like that as far as the programming is concerned throughout the playoff system. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Oh yes, sir. I think it's also like you said with the all pro players really just starting right after the season. You can tell why they are the one of the best of the league because they put in that work. Two more questions before we wrap up. The
Well,
first,
let me say this too. Is one thing very important about that, and I am of the age now that I know. I've studied the human body since I was old enough to read and write, just about. And when you get older, you lose your capabilities. I think 28 is the apex for speed and strength. And then as you do that, the thing that goes first, you'll stay strong up until 40. I mean, some of the world records have been set, by Vasily Alexev, at 40, 41 years old. But the thing that you do lose is the speed factor. And if there's just never been a whole lot of older sprinters. You getting some now. They're getting a little bit better, but you still can't beat Father Time, and that's the thing right there. So. One of the things that you really got to be able to do is keep the professional player, regardless of what sport you're football, basketball, baseball, does not make a difference. Golf is all. You have got to be able to keep your qualities up there. And one of the most important qualities is the explosion ability, the power, force times distance divided by time. You do that, and then you can elongate your career, 2 to 3 years. Now, with the money that these kids are making and started making when I was in the professional end of it, that'll put you a long way down the road, as long as you got somebody smart enough to invest your money for you. So if that's your chosen pathway in life, your money earning period of time is going to be over 40 years old. There's been some that play, but they're the exception rather than the rule. So that's another thing that's very important. But go ahead, Grayson. I just thought I'd add that in.
I think it actually segues into the next question I was going to ask you. Speaking of people going at 40 years old, starting to exceed expectations, what is your take and your grasp on what Tom Brady's been able to do? Obviously, he has his TB12 method. Have you looked into it? Have you read his book? Because I think he's doing something that most people would never be, like just what he's winning a Super Bowl at 43, being able to do all the things he does at such an older age, especially for the NFL. How have you perceived his career, especially in the later years, and his book and his methods?
Well, I don't know what methods he has used. I think he's changed them a lot. I know Johnny Parker had him, I think, up there. I think I'm right. I can't remember, years gone by now so fast that Johnny was with Parcells up there after the New York years, and I think. But Brady first of all, is a mentally tough son of a gun, and that number one is it. And I think if you'll see a lot of those John Elway that I had, Phil Simms, hey, yeah, that's what they are mentally tough. Now you got to be gifted. I'm not trying to say just but the way that he's trained, he has taken a lot of steps in making sure that his body is adapting to what it needs to do. Drew Brees, I had a conversation with Drew Brees. I went down to Saints probably, I don't know, 6-8 years ago, somewhere like that, and I got a chance to visit with him. We kidded about one day, and we almost took him in the draft with us when we took Michael Vick in Atlanta. But anyway, it's another story. But these guys really take care of their body. They don't take care of their body just 3 out of 5 days a week, a work week. It's 24/7. So the things of which they do, and your body changes, as I told you earlier, with those different periods and times in your life, they've changed with it and found what worked for them and continued it. But now all of them have had that game right there. Believe me, it takes no prisoners, and if you can come out of there without problems, then the licks that they hit, the shoulders, the ankles, the knees, the hips, the back, hands, it just broken noses. It's a tough game, and those cats that are playing it, man, let me tell you now, they can go, Grayson. They can go. The field almost looks like it's too small for them to play in sometimes. They're that fast.
That's crazy. With you in the NFL, you've been in the NFL for so long, you worked with so many different teams. Tell me, who was your favorite player or set of players that you loved working with? Was there a specific story that you had that was like, that player really resonated with me? Tell us about that.
Well, a lot of people have asked me that same question, and I've been blessed. Good Lord blessed me and put me in the right spots at the right time with the right people. So I want to be perfectly honest with you about that. And the thing is, if you say, "Oh, boy, this was the best player that I ever had," well, that's a slight to the others now. But to be completely honest with you, we had, or I, was fortunate enough to coach some great ones. How can you say this one was better than that one when that one, So I don't, but I do say that there are, the one story that tickled, it is funny, is that I was just hired, like I was telling you about, Dan hired me out there. So I go out there, and I think I'll go and get out there around 1st February and leaving Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and going to Denver. I had never been in the mountains in my life, good Lord. So I was starstruck by a lot of things there. But anyway, I go in there, so they tell me, Mike Shanahan was our quarterback coach, and Mike and I got to be good friends. And he said, and Dan, Coach Reeves did too, said that, John Elway, doesn't lift weights. I looked at him, I said, "Do what?" He said, John doesn't lift weights. I said, "Well, he got hurt this year, didn't he?" And they said, "Yeah, his knees are bad." I said, "Well, there you go." I said, he'll do that. And they said, "Well, he doesn't lift." And I said, it just bumfuddled me. He was, top player chosen and all that. Anyway, so, I kind of had my speech all together, and so sitting around one morning working on programs, like I was telling you I did, and all of a sudden, about 11 o'clock, here he comes, walk right by the old facility that we used to have. He came in and said, "Hey." I said, "Well, hey." I said, "How you doing?" And he said, "I'm John now." I said, "I know you are." I said, "Come on in here." So we sat down, started talking, and I, went through a bunch of things, just trying to get each other, find out, And I said, "Well, John, let me ask you a question." I said, it's coming down to this anyway. I said, "It's why you're here probably." I said, they tell me that, you're position coach and head coach, that you don't lift weights." He said, "That's right. I sure don't." I said, "Well, do you mind me asking why?" And he said, "Well, I don't need to." And I thought to myself, I said, "Well, he does have a pretty good point there, He's the first player in the baseball and football draft." So I said, "Well," I said, "the thing," and so I started in on my little sales speech. It sounded like carnival harky. And I said, well, it's going to increase the speed on the football. Well, like the wide receivers tell me that I throw it too fast anyway. I said, well, all right. I said, I'll tell you what, it'll help you with your setups and get you getting back, dropping back faster and plant foot. Well, they tell me I'm fast anyway. Throws the timing off with the wide receivers. And I said something else, and then he had a rebuttal for that. And about that time, I said, well, I'll tell you one dadgum thing, and I might have changed my language back then. I said, one thing it's going to do is going to keep you healthy on the field for 16 games a year and hopefully more, and so you can do what you're brought here to do, and I can stay employed. So I said, there you go. And he looked at me, boy, and I said, uh-oh. I said, he's going to punch me in the snout, And he stood up, extended his hand. He said, I've been waiting for somebody to talk to me like and tell me. No, he said, I've been waiting for somebody to tell me that. And he said, I'll be here tomorrow. I said, well, we don't start. He said, I'll be here tomorrow. And let me tell you, when he started, he was as weak as, weak. He was weak. And Mike Shanahan said, I'm going to work out with you. And so he and John worked out about that third, fourth week right there. That's sort of back before the off season started. John comes in and says, where's Mike? I said, I don't know. So I said, Mike, you go. He came down there and he said, you going to work out? I said, no, I ain't working out with you anymore. And he said, well, how come? He said, well, you ain't fun anymore to work out with. He said, I'm sore, so I can't move. Well, John had taught me a lesson with that. The great athletes, Grayson, the great athletes will have a lot faster curve of learning. They're kind of like the smart kids were when I was in school. I was the dunce, and they would go to the teacher's pet. They knew all the answers. And the kids that were really gifted to do a lot of things automatically. Alva Mills made mention of that a lot of times. And John was that way. He went on. He was weak. When I say he was weak, he was weak. And we always were very careful of his knees because, he had a lot of trouble with them, and they were bad coming to the NFL. But he got really strong. In the course of, I was there 8 years with him. He got strong, and I never let him. He would want to go. He was eager. He would get in there and challenge the offensive line. He was one of the ones that if I ever had to say that was a changer at that late in his career, I think that helped him a lot. I really do. He was a great athlete before, but this gave him strength to be able to do things. He was really he got real strong.
And the rest is history for that. Yeah. It's crazy.
That was one of the funnier stories there. But there were so many real stars that I had one kid that was named Joe Delaney. Joe, many old timers would probably remember that name. Joe was a running back, and I was at Northwestern here in Louisiana, Northwestern State University, not the big one up north. And Joe came there. Joe, enormous speed and unbelievable athlete, and a lot of people were after him. We got because his head coach and our head coach were good friends and coached together and so forth. And Joe was drafted in the second round, I think, by Kansas City, and I think made All-Pro first 3 years. And he ended up drowning, saving 3 kids' life
Wow.
out here in just a little place in a park. And went, I think, 2 years ago and did the eulogy. We put up a big monument out here for him. But he was one of the best athletes. They won they had Mark Duper. Mark was an all-pro wide receiver for the Dolphins. He played wide receiver for us. And we had another young man that played wide receiver, played about 3 or 4 years, I think, for Chicago. And they had the 4x1 fastest relay team. Joe was one of the kids that I began to understand that the great athletes, which Joe was. Joe ran. I forgot. He was one of the fastest kids I ever had. He, Mike Vick, Vance Johnson, a lot of these guys, just for enormous speed. 4.2s. That's a legitimate 4.2. High 4.2s, 4.28, 4.27. But anyway, Joe Delaney was special, and that was the one that taught me a lot about the great white fibered athlete that could explode, and how he already had a head start, and understood what a lot of the older coaches used to say: you just got to go recruit that fast one. I understand why. But that's pretty much it. And a lot of great ones. I mean, you sit here, I have had a lot of them, but just very fortunate. But a particular one, it went too hard. I couldn't pick them.
Well, I think that wraps up our show today. That is just so many experiences, so many stories, so much knowledge. This is one of the most decorated podcast interviews I will probably ever do. Coach Miller, thank you so much for joining the show.
Let me say one thing in parting, and I wish somebody had told me this, when I was a young man, and I'll say this to all the young coaches that are out there now, and they're young people that you don't have to be a coach to understand this, but if you're in the coaching business, it's a tough business. Now, there ain't no doubt about it. Now, you can do a lot of things to make it easier or harder for yourself. But one of the things I think everybody needs to be able to do is there's going to be a lot of dark times in your life, a lot of hard times in your life, a lot of times that a lot of people just throw up their hand and say, I'm ready to quit, or whatever the case may be. But I'll tell you what, if everybody needs to develop, if you've not been granted the ability through your family or whatever of a closer walk with Jesus Christ and God, and find a way to do that, I'm very fortunate of being able to sit here and tell you firsthand, it makes life a lot easier. And you delve into the Bible. It really would help. So I'm a big believer in it, and I would like to tell all the kids out there, young people, that you need to take time to make sure that you do follow along that guideline. But Grayson, I really appreciate you having me here today. I enjoy sharing the story. I hope it didn't bore you too much.
Not at all.
I hope that the kids out there, the young people, that got something from this, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yes, sir.
I've had a lot of fun doing it, and I have a lot of good friends that contributed to my success. There's no doubt about it.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Man with a Plan podcast, episode 46 with legendary strength coach Al Miller. Guys, if you enjoyed the show, be sure to share this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and as always, take care.